you have reached has been disconnected.
Good evening, how you all doing, folks? Thanks for tuning in again. Welcome back. If you've joined me over the last 2 nights, thanks for coming back. Hope you've enjoyed it so far. If you're just joining us fresh tonight, then welcome. You're very, very welcome. My name's Peza, and I'm here to deliver the mini course that I've decided to do over YouTube and Facebook. Good evening, Mike. How you doing? I will be checking the messages, by the way, so if you are sort of tuning in and you want to just get involved, I'd encourage that wholeheartedly. It's nice to have a little bit of banter while things are going along. So thanks for joining us again, Mike. How you doing, mate? You all right? Yeah. So my name's Peza, and I'm a musician and a DJ, and I've been making music for 30 years. Hi, Ed. How you doing? And predominantly certainly over the last 10 to 15 years, it's been using Ableton. So I've kind of developed my own methods and my own style with Ableton, and I thought it'd be a good idea to try and share that with a few people. So that's the idea of the course and these sessions. Yeah, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Ed, nice to see you back, mate. Thanks for the shout out last night on the radio show. So yeah, these sessions over the past 3 days have been a bit of a taster for a main course that I'm writing, which is going to be available. If you check in the description and everything else, you'll see the links to that. Please put your name down and please register on the waiting list, because it's really good for me to be able to keep you informed as to how that's going on and the progress that's been made. So yeah, that'd be great if you could register yourself on that. Okay, so what we've covered over the past 2 nights. The first night was an introduction into the user interface, which I thought was a brilliant starting point. Obviously, if you don't know the user interface or you struggle with it, then it's quite difficult to find your way around Ableton. It can be quite sort of intimidating when you open it up, especially with the 2 pages. You've got clip view and you've got arrangement view, and there's quite a big difference between the 2, but they are quite linked. So yeah, it can be quite confusing. So the first night we talked about the user interface and we touched upon the browser, again, which is a really important integral part of Ableton. So we touched upon that the first night. Second night we went through a bit of MIDI programming. We started coming up with a bit of a beat, which started to develop into something quite nice actually. So I think I'm going to use that again tonight, just to demonstrate tonight's session. We also talked about the browser again last night, because I felt like I'd cut it short a little bit the night before. And with the browser, it's a really important thing to sort of get your head around and find your own way of working with it. By the way, I've just done a little burp, and the reason is because it's the 3rd night, and I've never done this before, by the way. I've never done live streaming before. Obviously, I know Ableton and my studio and everything else, but the streaming thing's kind of new to me. So set myself a little task of doing 3 nights, and because it's the 3rd night, I said to everybody who's joining in, if you fancy having a drink while we're doing it, well, have a drink. So cheers. This is I'm sure there's other lagers available, but this is what I'm drinking tonight. So yeah, and it is warm outside. So getting back on track. By the way, if you are having a tipple, just type in the title of your tipple that you're having tonight, so I can just have a little nose. Right, so tonight we're going to cover working with audio and audio clips. Cheers, Paul. We're going to look at using Ableton. There's lots of different ways you can use audio, and when I was thinking about this today, I was kind of thinking what angle to come from. And just pausing for a second, Mike is on the Thatcher's Vintage. Well done, Mike. I'll see you in an hour, depending on how many you've had. You might not see me, right? Joe, how you doing, Joe? Thanks for coming back again. Joe's on the San Miguel. We're on a similar tip tonight, I think, with a beer. Nice one. Well done, Joe. Yeah, keep them coming, by the way. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways of working with audio. One of the fundamental ways, and this is why I'm going to use the little beat that we started making last night. I very often use audio loops to kind of colour in a beat that I'm making. So, and by the way, if you didn't catch last night, you can catch it on my YouTube channel. So, you know, don't despair with that. You can catch up on all of these 3. The mini-series will be up on my YouTube channel. And we covered the MIDI programming last night, like I say, and we came up with this beat. So I would come up with a beat using stock sounds like an 808 kit or my own custom sounds, and then to add a bit of spice or a little bit of flavour in to those core ingredients, I'll kind of look at audio loops, and you know, it's hit and miss sometimes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a nice, interesting way of developing your idea and taking it in a different way to perhaps what you originally thought. So I'd encourage you to do that and just experiment with it. You probably do that already anyway, but I'm going to show you how I do it, and we'll kind of take it from there. I'm going to go through the fundamentals of how Ableton warps audio. I think that's important to kind of get your head around. And then I'm going to attempt live to record a little bit of a synth line over what we did last night. And it will most likely be out of time, not because I want it to, but because I'm not a brilliant keyboard player. So I need to warp it. So it's a perfect example of how to use Ableton's warping capabilities. So we're going to do that, and I'm also going to drag in a full track and show you how I warp that as well, because if you know me and you know what I do quite a lot of edits, which entails taking an old disco or funk track or whatever kind of track and getting it in time in Ableton, and then kind of incorporating my own sounds on top, whether it be drum beats or keyboard sounds or both or all of it. I'm going to try and go through a little bit of that with you as well. So we've got quite a lot to talk about, and I'm going to get cracking in a minute. But just to reiterate, for those of you who haven't watched any of these yet, I do want to reiterate this because, like I say, I know all this stuff and I know Ableton, but I've got quite a lot of tech around me at the minute that I'm just finding my feet with and getting a bit more confident with. So if I do have a little fumble, if I do lose my way a little bit, please just bear with me and I'll try and get things back on track as soon as possible. So yeah, there might be a few sort of dead moments or whatever. Just let me do my thing and I'll get things back on track. And also, before I crack on, do keep the comments coming, because I've got the comments. I can just about see them while I'm working. If you've got a question while I'm actually doing this stuff, if you've got a question to ask, if you know, just fire away. And if I don't answer it straight away, I'll try and go back a little bit and I will try and answer it for you during this session. So yeah, that's about it really. So now I'm going to go over to Ableton and I'm going to click this switch and hopefully you'll see me. Thanks, Joe. I will, mate. He says fumble away. Hang on a minute. There you go. You can see. I will, mate. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I'm going to go over there. You'll see me in the corner. I hope that's not too off-putting. Be that corner, I think. And we'll get Ableton up and we'll make a start. So here we go. Let me just have a little bit of a play around with this lot and get myself in order. Let me just move over here. There we go. Right, so I'm just going to drag these comments over so that I can see what you guys are talking about. There we go. That's all good. So yeah, please fire away with questions if I'm doing something. And also, what I've noticed, I've looked back at one or two of them, and I'm hoping I'm getting the pace right. If things are going a bit too quick, you know, just ask me if I need to just slow things down or speed things up or whatever. Just you know, keep feeding back, and I'll try and tailor it to what you need. Okay, so right. So the first thing we're going to do then, I'm going to play you what we did last night, and for the guys that weren't here, we did a little demonstration about programming MIDI. I'm not going to go over it all again because I don't want to repeat myself, but we came up with a nice little beat. And if you'll just excuse me, I'm going to put my headphones on. Okay, there we go. I can actually hear the beat now. Yeah, so we came up with this little beat last night, and it was quite good for our demonstration. As you can see, just roughly going over it, we've got a MIDI clip at the top there. We've got an 808 core kit. You can see the drum triggers being triggered there. And if I click on the clip, you can see all the MIDI notes. Hope you can see and hear everything okay, guys. If not, just let me know. Nice little snare roll at the end. I'm going to switch over to the next pattern. Actually, I missed the snare thing over there, but I hit it a bit too quick. And then we came up with a little bass line. It's a little bit acid-tastic, but I think it's quite nice. Okay, so that's where we got to last night with this, and I'm just going to show you again with the browser, and this is what's important to get your head around the browser. I've got my sample library here in Places, which is almost like a favourites folder. So all of my samples, all of my sample libraries in this sample library. Obviously, the clue's in the title. So I know that needs a little bit of spice to it. It needs a little bit of flavour to it. So I've got a house folder within my sample library folder, and under there I've got a sample pack called Vengeance, which is great, by the way. You need to check it out if you haven't got it. And what you can do with the browser, you can just click on any of these loops and you can get a lovely preview. Now the previews will run at the tempo that they're programmed at. So I think these are all, yeah, it says they're all about 128. Well, I'm working at 115, right? 128 is far too quick for me these days. So actually, I quite like the sound of that. Obviously it sounds too fast, but watch what happens when I drag this. And bear in mind, this is an audio loop, it's not MIDI. So the beauty of Ableton is how it handles audio. I can just drag that, drop it onto this track here, and there we have, bang, we have the waveform. Okay, so we can see, and if I play that now, I'm just going to turn off the other tracks. I'm going to just play that loop on its own. And automatically you can hear that it's slowed down. What I want you to take notice of is, first of all, that marker there, the one that's highlighted green, and that one there. There are your start and end points, okay? So as I've brought that into Ableton, into this session, Ableton has recognised that that's the start and the end of this clip. But also, if you look above each of these transients, it's a fancy word for like the loud bit of the waveform, basically, a transient. So if you look at these and I zoom in, and again guys, we went over these icons. When the icon changes to a magnifying glass, we can zoom in, okay, and we can zoom out, and we can pan left and right. We covered that in lesson 1, so you can always look back on that. If I zoom into them, you can see Ableton is trying to tell me where these transients are, and it's done a very good job actually. So it picks things out and it analyses the waveform, and it pops in almost a warp marker. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you now how Ableton handles these, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy. I've only had one sip of that beer. Speaking of which, I might have another in a sec. Okay, so we've got the start and end points, right? What I want you to think of is this piece of audio as a thick elastic band, right? And at the front of it, which is the very start of the waveform, we've got that, and we've got a drawing pin. Think of that as a drawing pin. And then at the other end, we've got another drawing pin. So what happens if you pick the middle up and then you pull it to the left or you pull it to the right? Well, this is how Ableton works with audio. So if I pull that to the left, imagine that as an elastic band, and it's going to get faster and tighter that side, or that side, depending on which way I pull it, and it's going to get longer and slower the other side. So if I play that, it's going to sound a right mess, but I'll show it you anyway. I'll just turn it up a touch. Well, that's normal speed. And if I pull it that way, okay, you get the idea. Okay, speed up. Okay. Now obviously for this loop that's useless, right? But there's a reason I'm showing you that, and I'll show you a little bit more in depth later on. But hopefully that gives you an idea on how it treats audio and how you should think about these warp markers. Okay, so just as a basic thing, as a basic way of using loops and audio to enhance something that we've programmed, I'll show you what this sounds like now. Okay, so this is without that loop. I'll put the bass line on as well. Okay, it sounds nice, there's a lot of space there. If I wanted to pick things up a little bit, I can pop this loop in. So we'll wait until the end of that 8 bars, 4 bars. Here we go. Automatically, well, not automatically because we've chosen it, but you can see how it enhances the beat. You can see how it starts to drive things along a little bit. And again, it doesn't matter if I change the tempo. If I decide I'm working a bit too slow on this, I can change the tempo and that audio clip will stay in time. So I'm going to just demonstrate that for you. Everything's still perfectly in time with Ableton. Slow it right down. I quite like it at 115, so we're going to stick to that. So let me know if that makes sense. Just give me a little message on the right hand side. On the right hand side, that's my right hand side because I can see you think. Just give me a little a message saying yeah, that makes sense. on the comments. I think that's a clear way of demonstrating it, and also a clear way of showing you, when you come up with a beat, when you start making a track and you want to start populating it with different sounds and different elements, just focus on the drums for a bit, okay, and just start getting a groove going. Obviously with this as well, you can create as many tracks as you want. So if I said, okay, insert another audio track, and that's just a right click, insert audio track, and I've got another fresh one there, I can review another one. Sound quite nice, that's a bit bog standard. Might be interesting, shall we try it? Let's drag that on, pop it onto our loops. Now remember, on the first lesson as well, if you look at my gain stage in here, yes, the drums are quite high, but I've turned everything down. When you drop something in, just whack it down before you review it, because otherwise it's just going to bang at full volume, and it'll put you off straight away. So just bring it down, press play, and then fade it up to the level that you think it sits at. It's not too bad actually, but it's one of those sounds that I wouldn't have in all the way through. It would drive you mental. So what I'd probably do is use that as a little bit of spice somewhere, you know, maybe leading up to a change or a breakdown. But yeah, you get the idea with that. I'm going to take it out for now. Okay, so we've got our groove. I've shown you a basic thing about how to start spicing your beat up. I'm going to leave the bass line as it is. I'm going to attempt to play something in and record it straight into Ableton. Now, you can't see this, unfortunately. I think the next time I do this, what I'm going to try to do is get a camera onto some of the other kits so you can see if I'm going to play a synth line or play the drums in or whatever. You can actually see what I'm doing. But just underneath me now, I've got my keyboard, which is a Behringer DeepMind 12, which is fantastic, by the way. I've got a really nice little acid sound on there because I think it's quite percussive and it's going to demonstrate what we're going to do quite nicely. So first thing I'm going to do is just tidy my desktop up a little bit. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. You'll see as well, because this is an external instrument, I've had to route it into external in, and it's going into inputs 1 and 2. Okay, now that's for another session. I'm not going to start going into that now because it's going to eat into this the audio session. So again, these are the things that I will cover in depth in the main course. So I don't want to keep trying to sell that to you, but please register your interest on that because I'll be covering so much more. And these are the things that you kind of really need to know, just so you get comfortable with your routing and everything else. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to rename the track. Again, dead easy. Click on the top, right click on it, rename, or you can Command and R. I don't know what that is on PC. I think it's Shift and R. And I'm going to call that Acid Line. Okay, Acid Line. And another thing I'm going to talk to you about at some point is colour coding your tracks. I always do my synth sounds in purple or different shades of purple depending on how deep they are. That's just something that I've developed over the years. Okay, so I'm going to practice a bit. I'm going to play the track. I'm going to practice a bit of a line. And then I'm going to hit this record button here when I'm ready, okay? And you'll see that you don't have to get it perfect. You don't have to worry about getting the timing absolutely perfect. And you don't have to worry about stopping the clip on time. I'm going to show you that in a sec. So, first of all, I'm going to play the track. And bear with me, it might sound rubbish. It might sound all right. That'll do. Right, I've practiced it. Now I'm going to hit record. 1, 2. Okay, there we go. That'll do for demonstration purposes. Okay, so when I hit record there, you could see the waveform being recorded. Okay, I'm going to play it back and we'll see if it's in time or whether there's bits that need working out or whether it's out of time or whatever. Let's just have a little listen. Just take it off record mode there. Bit quiet, so I'm going to turn it up. Okay, it's not too bad actually. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just show you my method of doing this. And I would probably hone in onto the first bar. And remember we talked about this loop brace. This is why it's so important to get your head around how to use that. Because it's at this point you don't really want to have to worry about thinking about it too much. It does start to become second nature. The more you practice with it, the better you get at it. And you just start to reach for it and do it. Okay, so I know I want to focus in on the first bar, grab the loop brace, bring it over, and that should loop. We've got loop on there, look. We're on position 1 and it's 1 bar. So that should just play that first loop. Okay, it's not too bad. Going back to our rubber band analogy, if I thought that, let's say, that note there was slightly out of time, and you can see Ableton's just put a faint marker there. If I double click on that, and I try and pull it in time, look at what happens to the rest of the waveform. Everything gets squashed up, and that's going to be a nightmare to try and warp, right? So let me just get that back. And by the way, a very quick tip, to get back, if you've done something like I've just done and you're in danger of messing it up, Command and Z is your friend, okay? Because that's undo, and there's limitless undos on Ableton. So if you make a mess of something, you just want to go back 3 or 4, 10 steps, whatever it is, Command and Z will take you back, okay? You can even go back to like the very first stage of a blank screen if you wanted to, but just important to note that. So, bearing that in mind, what I'm going to do, and using the drawing pin analogy again, I'm going to just drop a drawing pin on the end there. It's a warp marker, but I'm calling it a drawing pin, right? So now if I try to move things around, you can see everything to the right of that warp marker is staying completely in place to how it was before. Okay, so none of that's going to be affected because I've pinned it there. Let's just Command and Z that again now. So let me just play this bar and we'll see where we need to correct things. Now, for me, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I quite like a little bit of feel to it and a little bit of looseness. Up to that one, I think everything's okay. So there's my drawing pin. And for this one, I think that one's a bit out of time. That sounds good to me. And can you see because I've put a little pin there, a warp marker there, when I moved that across, it affected these 2 notes, but in a pleasing way. So it affected them, and I don't think I have to touch them now. You know, you don't need to go overboard with warp markers. Less is more with warp markers. The more you warp something, the more chance you've got of making it sound unnatural. So that bar sounds good. And we're going to move on to the next bar. Right, I'm going to whiz through the next. I hope you get that sort of concept of what I'm doing here. I don't want to explain it for every bar because I think we're going to get bogged down in it otherwise. So I'm just going to whiz through. I'm going to show you what I'm doing, and I hope you're going to grasp it. Another quick trick for you. If you click on that loop brace now and just press arrow up, you'll move on to the next bar. Okay? It's nice and tidy, it's nice and easy. You ain't got to keep dragging things across and moving things around. If you click on that, press arrow up on your keyboard, you're on to the next bar. So let's have a little look at that. Put my little marker in. That second one is a bit lazy. I'm going to pull that across. I'm going to pull that across. Okay, I'm going to quickly show you something now. You'll notice that this is moving to the grid that's set. And as you zoom in, the grid changes. Okay? Now that's great if you're working with beats and percussive stuff like this, but sometimes you might want to not work to the grid and just do things kind of freehand, right? So if you right click on the grid, you've got the adaptive grid here, okay? The default setting is on narrow. You can put it to narrowest, you can put it to widest. I quite like working on narrow, but other than that, I turn it off, okay? You can still see the faint lines there where things should be, but it won't snap to them. It's a lot more fluid. If you can see that, it's a lot more easy to control. It's not snapping. You can move things. It's brilliant. That mode is brilliant for working with vocals. If you're doing vocals and you're working with backing tracks or whatever, and you don't want it to snap to the grid, this is a great way of working. I often work with this rather than having it snap. So let's just play that again. That's good. Happy with that. Loop brace, arrow up, next bar. Okay. I'm going to just snap that there. Just pull that across. Move that one back. I've pulled that one across there, but I'm kind of compensating with what's to the left of the waveform. I'm kind of compensating with moving that one back. You do get a feel for this, by the way. I know it looks complicated, but you know, watch this back if you get a chance, because you do get a feel for it, and it does become second nature after a bit. Okay, that one's good, so I'm going to pin it. That one's too early. That one's too late. Let's move that one across. Better. Right, okay. So I'm done with doing the 1 bar thing, so let's just move that across. Get it back to bar 1. Let's listen to what it sounds like as a 4 bar loop. Okay, I'm happy with that. I hope that makes sense for you. Again, you know, that's an acid line. It's a very percussive acid line, so you can see the transients and stuff, so it makes it quite easy to be able to warp things that way. I just want to very quickly talk to you about warp modes. Okay, so if you look over here, hoping you can see that, you've got lots of in this drop down menu here, you've got how many is it, 6 different warp modes. I've got mine set to default on complex, right? I usually use Complex Pro, but it depends on the source material. It depends what you're working with. If you're working with beats and you're working at roughly the tempo that the beat was recorded at, beats is great, okay? Because you can change how it preserves the transient, if you like. So you might have it set to 16th. So it might, you know, if it's a nice 16th hi-hat pattern or whatever, then that's a good setting. But I tend to use Complex Pro on most things, but it does put some artifacts into the audio. If I'm warping a full track, which I'm going to go through in a little while, let's say I want to do an edit, I will try to work on repitch, because that gives the least amount of warble or artifacts or whatever you want to call it into the audio that you're working with. Complex Pro does a very, very good job, but you can notice it. So just try, when you're working with this, just try different warp modes to see what suits the source material that you're working with. You know, if you maybe you're warping a saxophone, or again vocals or whatever, texture or tones might be better. It all depends on the source material. For this, I think it works fine on Complex Pro. We could have it on repitch, but actually probably we couldn't, because as you warp it, then it kind of changes pitch and warbles a little bit. So we'll leave it on Complex Pro. Okay, so we've got our acid line in. It's a little bit dry, so actually we also went through return tracks last night or the night before, and how you can send. You can see I've got the bass line sent to a delay and a reverb. You can see these meters bouncing up. Well, if you want to create a new return track, it's as easy as pie. All you do is right click, insert return track, and you've got another one to play with. So now if I look at my audio effects and I want a different delay, let's say we want echo, echo, echo. Couldn't resist, sorry. If we, let's say we want echo, right? So first thing we do is we're going to turn that all the way up to wet, so we're not getting the dry signal through echo, because all that's going to do is double the signal that you're sending to it, and that's just going to give you a bit more gain on it. You're losing a bit of control actually. So we keep it on full wet. We're going to solo it. We're going to get a nice setting on that. It's not being sent to it yet, but if I send it to C, you can see we're sending it to echo. Now if we wanted a nice big fat dub delay, which obviously you can automate if you wanted to do that. And there we go. That's two different methods of using audio in Ableton. Quite simple, but hopefully it gives you an idea on how the warping works, how you can work with loops, and then how you play stuff in and just get it in time to work more with the groove that you're working on. What I'm going to quickly show you, and I'm just going to mute these two off. Right, I'm going to simplify things down a little bit. I'm going to flip over now to arrangement view. Tab, if you remember, we talked about that on day one. So just tab. And now if I wanted to import a full audio track, a full song if you like, I'm going to show you how I do the warping on that. And again, this is quite basic, and I do go through this in a lot more depth, but just to give you an idea, this is a track I did a few years ago. And you can see you've got the full waveform there. We're all familiar with what that looks like now. I'm just going to have a quick sip of my beer. I suggest you do the same. Yeah, so we're all familiar with what the waveform looks like. But what we need to do, we need to try and get this. It's not warped at the moment. You can't see any warp markers there. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through how I warp tracks in order to do, and say if I'm working on an edit, this is a track that I did, but if I wanted to edit it or remix it or whatever, I might get the track in. Let me just check on this. Joe's just asking a question. What's with creating sends? Could you just have an echo effect dragged onto the audio track? Yes, Joe, you could, and that's a very, very good point. The benefit of having it on a return track is that if I then create a new sound, maybe some chords, some Rhodes or something like that, and I think, oh, you know what, that would work through that echo setting that I've got on the acid line, then all I've got to do is send my Rhodes track to send C. Okay, so the settings will be the same, but you're saving quite a lot of processing power. So if you look up here on the right hand side, we've got a little meter there that tells you how much processing power that you're using. In order to keep that down, we want to try and minimise the amount of plugins that we're using. The more you throw at Ableton, the more plugins and synths that you use, the more processing power you're going to use. Okay, so you might come to a point where that starts to struggle. You start to get glitches, and you think, oh my god, how am I going to get this back down? So from the outset, if you think, well, okay, I just want a nice simple delay, but I want a bit of control over it. The idea of putting it on a send is so that you can send other stuff to it as well. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? What other benefits are there? You've got quite a lot of control over it as well. You can route a send to another send. You know, you can automate the sends. You can do all kinds of stuff. And it depends on the application as well. I mean, you know, for a live setting, for instance, you might have a vocalist going through a send track, but obviously that's getting a little bit more complicated then. Hope that answers your question. Well, it's got you, so I'm hoping so, Joe. Again, this is quite a simplified version of what I'm trying to say, but that's the essential reason why I do it. And yeah, I hope it makes sense. Okay, so going back to this then. So if we wanted to warp this track, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to find out where the downbeat is. Okay, so the downbeat is where the track begins, or there might be say you're doing an old funk track, there might be the drummer's doing a little fill in and then the kick kicks in, and that's beat 1 bar 1, right? So luckily for us, this one's quite standard, and you can see that that is going to be the downbeat. I'll just play it you as it is now. I'm going to solo it as well so that we don't hear anything else. Okay. Now I'm not sure what tempo this was made at. I can't remember. It's a while since I made it now, but again, we'll use the magnifying glass and we'll just check. There's no warp markers on there whatsoever. And I'm going to slowly talk you through the process that I do to get things in line like this. And it does save an awful amount of time if you can get your head around doing it this way. We're going to zoom in. We're going to get onto the first downbeat. I'm going to just go just slightly across to where that transient just starts to hit. Okay. Now, this arrow is the start point. Obviously, there's no warp markers there yet, but if I right click on that, now we've got this set of options. And this is what I always do. Set 1.1.1 here, right? You're telling Ableton that that is bar 1, beat 1, measure 1, right? This is the very beginning of the track. Okay, so then what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom back in again, and you can see Ableton has started to try and put a few warp markers in. It's trying to analyse the track for us, and it does do a pretty good job, but it's not as accurate as this method now. So if you right click on that very first one again, and you just click on warp from here straight, okay, there's no warp markers on there, it's all nice and tidy. But if I put the click track on, I'll just turn the click track up for you guys. You can hear that that's pretty much in time now, and it's also telling me that the BPM, the original BPM, is 114. Now, what we can do, as I said with the small audio loop, we can change the tempo of this now. Say if I was working at 1, 2, 3, and I wanted to edit this track, we can move it up and down and it will stay in time. So, nice and tight, still sounds in time. Brilliant. We're working at 115, so I'll put it back down to that. I'm going to keep the metronome on just for a little while, because this is what, and again, this is my method. Lots of people have got different methods with this, but this is the way I do it, and I just want to quickly show you this. We can see the waveform, it's kind of pumping all the way through really, and in fact if I just fast forward to here, great, it's still there, it's still in time. What I would tend to do now is look at just after the breakdown. Obviously that's the breakdown, it's going to be quiet. So it comes back in at 113 bars, right? So if I have a little look here, right, it's kind of drifted a little bit. So as the track's running, it's just kind of drifted a little bit. So I'm just going to pop a little, I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to go to where I put the first one. I'm going to do the equivalent on this section, and then I'm just going to drag it back so that it hits on bar 113. Now I've only got 2 warp markers there. You'll notice there's no end marker. I've left that free because anything that I want to do here now, I do want it to affect the rest of the waveform, and I'll just check to make sure that it's not made a mess of it by just going towards the end to where the ending kicks in. And again, it's just slightly out, so I'm going to drag that, pin it, and that should be, if I keep the metronome on, we can click through any part of this track and it should be in time. Okay, that's running in time. Now, just for demonstration purposes, and I'm going to stop this in a sec because I want to do some Q&A with you. But if I very quickly go onto my audio effects, go onto my EQs and filters and get EQ8 on that, I'm going to just put a high pass filter on it, drag that across so all the bass has disappeared. Let's just go back. Now you can hear I've got our original beat that we made last night. If I want to, I can bring the bass in. Let's see if it works in key. It's not in key, so I'm just going to change the pitch of Neptune. Now that's in time. Take the metronome off. And there we've got a bit of a remix going now. Let's try the acid line. Let's dub it out. Sounds a bit of a mess now, but you get the idea. So there we go. That's all I'm going to cover with audio tonight. I'm going to come back over to the other side now and have a little beer with you, and I need you to fire out some questions to me, okay? So let me just get myself sorted. I'm coming over. Hang on a sec. Well, a bit tangled up now. Right. Just get this over here. And I'm back with you guys. So, yeah, I'm hoping that covers the way I work with audio with you. I think I kind of said this last night. When you start working with Ableton, when you start using Ableton, you will find your own method with it. There's so many different ways that you can use it. And when you see these, you know, somebody might say the complete guide to Ableton. I'm not sure there is one. I'd contest that, because I don't think there is a complete guide. I think everybody that uses it, and myself included, you're always learning new stuff with it. You know, there's never a right or wrong way. I'll always try new things with it. And again, I think I said maybe the night before, I kind of think of it as a way to problem solve. So if I want to do something in the studio, if I want to record one of my pieces of hardware through another piece of hardware and then into Ableton, then I want to do something else. With Ableton, there's pretty much always a way that you can do that. It's quite strange. It's part of the reason why I love it so much, really. I think you know, it's quite limitless. The only limitations of it really are your knowledge of it, how you use it, and you know, sometimes ideas, we can all sit in front of it and have a complete blank and get a bit of writer's block or whatever. But again, one of the reasons I love it is because, you know, you can use loops, and you just create a beat from out of nothing, and then you think, well, actually that sounds all right. Well, I wonder if that, and it'll take you on its own little journey. So yeah, that's kind of how I use it, really. And I've shown you tonight. I've shown you how I use the audio clips. These are just snippets, you know. I mean, there's so much more to it. And again, I'd encourage you to just put your name down on the email waiting list for the full course, where I'll be going through a lot more of this in a lot more depth. So yeah, any questions? Anybody got any burning questions or anything that they want to know? There's still a few of you on, so you know, if you're lurking and you've got something to ask, now's the time. Shout up. And again, I just want to say, and I've said this pretty much every night, really. I just want to thank you all for joining in and giving me the chance to do this, because it has been a bit nerve-wracking, and it's new to me. But I've really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed having you on board, and some of the messages afterwards have been brilliant. So yeah, keep in touch, and please let me know how you're getting on with it as well. You know, if these things have been useful to you, and you've decided that you're going to crack on with it, I'd love to know how you're getting on. That really means a lot to me. So if you're watching this afterwards, I know we're live at the moment, but if you're watching this afterwards on YouTube or on my Peza Tutorials Facebook page, still leave messages. I'll still interact. You know, if you want to ask a question, still do it on there, and I'll do what I can to answer them as much as I can. Okay, we've got a question. Mike is asking, I've been on and off with it for a few years, and now when I go back to it, I've totally forgotten how to use it, so I haven't got any questions at the mo. That's fine, Mike. Listen, man, it's like everything. It's, you know, if it's having the time to put into it as well, isn't it? You know, it's very difficult if you've got a busy lifestyle, which I know you have. I know you're very busy. It's difficult then to just set aside time for doing stuff like this. What I'd suggest there, really, Mike, is try and give yourself, even if it's an hour a week, you know what I mean? Just ring fence an hour a week off, and give yourself a task. Say, right, okay, I am going to learn how to whatever that may be. And then if you do that, an hour a week, it's like going to the gym or something, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? If you can say, right, I'm going to get myself fitter, but you've got to ring fence a little bit of time for it. And I think if you do that, you'll probably try and make a bit more progress. But I know exactly what you mean, mate. You know, it's one of them things. It feels a little bit like a luxury, doesn't it, when you sit down and start making music? But it's actually quite essential. It's essential for me anyway. I have to do it. So, you know, just think of it along those lines. Let me know how you're getting on as well, man. Keep in touch. Got a question here from Joe. How do you cut out a chunk of audio and then fix it back together after? Okay, so I think I've got time. I'm going to quickly show you how to do that, Joe. I think I know what you mean. Okay, let me just try this. Right, so if we go back, I'm getting a bit tangled up. If we go back to Ableton, just bear with me, mate. Now I'm hoping that this is what you mean, right? So I'm going to mute everything off and I'm going to go back to our audio track here. Like if you have an audio sample but you want to cut out the middle of it. Okay, so let's say, right, for argument's sake, and just again for this demonstration, that the lump of audio that you've got that you want is the track that we've just warped, right? So the first thing you would do is you would warp it the way that we did this, and there's a number of ways of doing this again, but I'm going to show you the way I do it, or the way I would do it. Let's say I wanted this bar here. Okay, I'm going to click on the loop brace, I'm going to loop around it, let's play it. Let's say I want those 2 bars because that crashes is doing my head in. Right, now what I would do is I would click. Now if you notice, I'm just clicking on that left bracket of the loop brace, and then I'm going to press Command and C, right? Command and C for cut. Wait a minute. Command and E, sorry. Command and E for edit, right? So even I get it wrong sometimes. So Command and E for edit, right? Now that's cut that. If I move that way, that's cut that. Now I'm going to go to the end of the loop brace, Command and E for edit again. And now I'm just going to drag that down onto a blank space underneath. I'm going to solo that. Now what we can do you remember when we did Command and D? Yeah? Command and D for duplicate. If I duplicate that now, let's just get rid of that so it's not confusing. Now what we've got is we've got that chunk. And there we go. Now I can duplicate it again. You know, and then you can start doing fancy stuff like if I double click on that end one, yeah, we could edit that. No, I'm not going to edit it because that'll take us into a different program. Basically, you could reverse that. You can reverse it. You can slice it up. If I wanted to just slice that up a little bit further, I could just drag that and just duplicate these so that we've got and then we'll have just these little chunks here. Does that answer your question? Very rough, rudimentary little demonstration there, but I'm hoping it answers your question. Does that answer your question, Joe? And again, you know, this is stuff that I'll be covering in a lot more depth on the main course. I'm hoping that answered it though. Oh, wicked. He says yep, so that's good. Okay, I kind of grasped what you meant, but you know, and again, there's so many different ways you can do it, mate. You know, it's all I can do is show you the way I do it. Somebody else might show you a quicker way, a better way, an easier way, but this is the way I work with it, and you know, that's all I can do really. But yeah, just play around with it. The thing about working with audio is in Ableton is it's non-destructive, so you can't like delete things or ruin things. So just have a play around and see what happens. And get used to these little keyboard shortcuts as well. There's a lot of merit to doing that. The manual's pretty good for it as well, so just check on that. I've got one more question here from Mike. I have a Nord keyboard. How can I use it just as a controller because it plays sounds out the keyboard and from Ableton? Okay, if it's got its own volume control, Mike, you've got to just turn that down, right? If you're going through a mixing desk, you can mute the channel. So yeah, if you've got it set up in your settings as a keyboard controller, you should just be able to fire things off in Ableton, and then it's just a matter of either muting or turning the volume down on your Nord while you're playing that. Whichever way is easiest for you to do that. Literally, I've got my Behringer DM12 here, and if I'm programming drums and I want to play them in rather than listen to that, that's what I'll do. I'll either mute it on my mixing desk, or I'll just turn the physical volume down on my DeepMind 12, and that's the way I work with it, really. I hope that answers your question, mate. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. It's coming to the end of the session, folks, and it's coming to the end of the 3 days. So I'm gonna say cheers. It really has been great, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have too. Just want you to keep in touch and let me know how you're getting on, and I'll probably do some more of these because I have enjoyed it immensely. I'll probably do some more, and I'll try and think about what topics to choose from. Obviously this was aimed at people that are coming into Ableton fresh, or maybe just needed a bit of a refreshment course. And it's also, obviously, it's a way to introduce my full course to you guys, and it's really important to me that I get that message across, because I'm putting a lot of work into this, and what I don't want is all this knowledge and all the techniques that I've developed over the years. I want to be able to pass it on, and for other people to start making some great stuff, and that would be brilliant. If in some time some of you guys started making stuff and it turns out brill, and this has helped you along the way, just even a tiny amount, then that would give me a massive buzz. So just keep in touch and let me know how that goes. I'm going to say cheers, and I'm going to say enjoy the rest of your evening and have a great weekend. Get the suntan lotion on because it looks like a scorcher. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and keep in contact, and I wish you all the best. I'll see you again soon, hopefully. Catch you later.